our worship team a hand? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect that, and it was actually really good. That was awesome. And it's Friday. I was in high school once, so Friday means football, right? You guys have a football team. The Knights, go Knights. You guys are gonna like destroy Westville. That's what I heard. That doesn't sound like people were gonna destroy Westville. You're gonna destroy Westville? Alright, that's more like it. This is how we're going to start. We're going to pray because I don't know how to do anything else without doing that first. So Lord, I thank you so much for this morning. Thank you for every student in these seats, for the faculty, for the teachers, for the friends, for every person that's walked through these doors. Lord, you have shown us through our whole lives that you set moments that mark us, that you set divine appointments that we never could have imagined. And I pray, Lord, that this morning is one of those times for everyone here in this room. I pray that I can get out of the way and that they hear from you this morning. Use my mouth, use my arms and legs and my weirdness to influence these folks. All this we ask and we thank you for, and I count it done in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so does anybody know who I am? I'm your weird, you do? That's cool. Weird. I'm the IT guy. So why is an IT guy here talking to you guys in chapel? I don't know either. But I have been talking to some folks around the school just about who I am. And they thought this would be a good idea. We'll see. So my name is Senegal, as you heard. I'm from Alabama. I won't tell you what team I cheer for on Saturdays. Because we're really close to another school that a lot of people like. My grandfather on my mom's side was a sharecropper. He didn't own the farm, he worked the land for somebody else. On my dad's side, my grandfather was actually a recording artist. He had 2 or 3 gold albums with his band. My parents were never married, so I came out of not a broken home. It was a home that was never even put together in the first place. When I was 2 years old, I grew up in a really small town called Fayette, Alabama. And when I was 2 years old, things changed for my mom and me and my little sister, who was 2 years younger than me. And a lot of things happened. My grandmother passed away, my mom's mom, who had been her rock through most of her life. And then she decided she was going to pick us up and move us to another town. The small town that we were from didn't have a lot of opportunity. Most of my family, most of the people that we knew would grow up, live, work, and die all within about a 25-mile radius of the same spot. And so she picked us up and moved us to another less small town called Bethlehem, Alabama, right outside of Auburn. And there are some of you people out there too. We grew up without a lot. The first house I remember living in was a trailer. We were on Section 8 housing. All of the stuff, government assistance, we had that. None of it mattered because we had everything we needed. I didn't know anything else. That was normal to me. That was life. And God used all of those things to get me here today. Through that, my mom had to drop out of school when she was in 8th grade because there was a farm to tend to. So she entered into life kind of at a disadvantage because she only had an 8th grade education. She wanted better for her kids, and Oklahoma had a better school system. So when she got there, she went back to school to get her GED so she could help me and my little sister with our homework. I had 2 older brothers that I grew up with also, who were in high school at the time, and it gave them some opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. My mom's never had a driver's license. She is now 72 years old. She's never had a driver's license. So we would walk everywhere that we went. We would take the public transportation, we'd take the bus. And I was really embarrassed of all of those things. I never imagined when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I'd be standing in front of a room full of people telling them that I did this because I really wanted to just hide my head. I wanted to crawl inside of a shelf. I wanted to be somebody else. So let's fast forward a few years, and we get to move out of that trailer into a house. My mom agrees to take care of a distant relative who has Alzheimer's. And when you take care of somebody who has Alzheimer's, you essentially agree to give up your life. But this was a better house for us to live in. It was a brick house. It wasn't big, but it was better than where we were. So she sacrificed to do that, and she took care of this relative from being able to walk to basically being a baby, an 83-year-old who can't go to the bathroom by themselves, can't feed themselves, all those things. One day, I remember when I was in 4th or 5th grade, I came home and there was a blood stain on the street in front of the house. And it was because a drug dealer had been shot in front of the house that I lived in. Now, all of that sensational stuff is just to give you a snippet picture of how I got here staying in front of you today. Because what I believe God wants to do in all of us, and what He wants all of us to do for other folks as we move forward from here, is to change our sense of normal. Right? We all have different experiences. We all have a series of things that have happened in our lives. Some of us have lived charmed lives. Everything has been awesome. It has been wonderful. We've got wonderful parents. We've never lacked for anything. We've had everything that we needed our whole lives, and some of us haven't. And that matters. Jesus is what I like to call the great equalizer. Right? Once we come into Him, then God's our Father, and He owns everything. He created it all. And so He invites us into that with Him. When I was growing up, I just shared with you a little while ago that I hated the way that I lived. I looked at myself as being less, as having less. I couldn't go on the football team and go to places, and we didn't do vacations. It just wasn't an option. But I had this thing inside of me where now I know it's the gift that God gave me, but at the time, I just thought I was a really cool person. That's not true, by the way. So I was really good at school. I made A's. When I got to high school, I was in the National Honor Society. I was vice president of the FFA. Go FFA. You guys, yeah, one guy. I was vice president of the FFA, National Honor Society. I was ranked 21 in a class of 368 people. I was pretty smart. But I was really high on myself, to the point where I really thought I was an awesome person. Now I'm going to back up a little bit, and I didn't see my dad. There was a rift between my dad and my mom, and I didn't see him from the time I was 7 until I was 14 at all. There were phone calls and emails, that stuff wasn't big then, but we didn't communicate at all from 7 to 14. When I was 14, by that time, we were involved in church. And I didn't enjoy that either. That's just me. I know you guys love it, but I didn't. So we were involved, and because of this intellect that God had given me, I was asked to lead things, to be an MC. I worked my way into being a worship leader in the church I grew up in. What worship leader means is on Sundays we had a hymnal, and we would progress through the service, and I was the guy that announced, all right, now we're going to sing a song. Now we're going to read this scripture, and now we're going to do this thing, and now it's time for the pastor to come and preach. I was doing that by the time I was 15 years old. But I was playing a game. I was putting on a face every Sunday. And I was doing it because I was told to. It's what I was supposed to do. We're going to fast forward a little bit more, and now I'm getting ready to graduate from high school. And when my mom was really strict, I had gotten a car around 16. I got a job, started working, started helping out, paying bills around the house. I got my own car to get around on my own and to carry my mom around and help. When I graduated from high school, my mom gave me some freedom. Before that, it was always you go to school, you go to work, you come home. There's nothing else. So I got that freedom. And because I was just putting on a face up until that point, and nothing that God had ever said or shown me had ever really taken root inside of me, I went out and started making really stupid decisions because I was so good. What bad could happen to me? Right? I was really smart. I knew stuff. I got arrested 2 years after I graduated. I'm in college at this time. I'm still on honor roll, honor society. I made the dean list 4 out of 5 semesters by this point. Then I got arrested 3 times in 6 months. It was for doing stupid stuff that kids do. I use the excuse I'm a kid, I'm young, I do what I want to, and I'll have time down the road to get stuff right. But thankfully, by the grace of God, he did give me time to get it right. So I was 19 years old, and I was getting arrested for the third time. And then a lot of the stuff that had been building up in my brain before, that I'd set on the shelf, really started to impact my heart. So I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit of the story about my dad. When he came back when I was 14, he was not the same man. Before that, my dad was a womanizing, alcoholic, abusive, drug-using jerk. That's just who he was. But when he came back when I was 14, he was an entirely different man. A man I could actually look up to and respect. He had seen a picture of who God was and let that change him. His hair was different, his face was different, everything about him was different at that point. And I wasn't ready to follow or do it, but I took note that for the first time in my life, I'd seen someone who did everything that he said. There was no disconnect between those two things. So I had this stuff building up. My dad says it's like snow building up on the mountain. I would go and visit him during the summers on school breaks and that kind of thing, and he would just pour in. And so now, at 19, when I'm getting arrested again, once was for drinking, by the way, and the second and third times were for a Halloween prank gone really wrong. So this time of year is kind of weird for me because it's really good and really bad all at the same time. But that third time, I said, all right, God, I hear you. I've been hiding a lot of things. On Sunday mornings when I was up as a worship leader, there were times I would come over because I've been out drinking the night before. There were times I really just didn't want to be there, so I would do everything I could to kind of speed the service up so that we could get out the door a little bit faster. But at this moment, all of that stuff started to fade away, and God started to get bigger and bigger. This picture of Jesus that he'd been painting in my whole life as he carried me from before to this point started to clear up. It had been really fuzzy before, but now the picture started to take on a much clearer shape. After that, I got saved. This is a funny story. I've been baptized 3 times. The first 2 didn't take, but on that third time, I finally got it. The first time it was because it was what I was supposed to do. I was 13 years old, and I was in the Methodist church, so we sprinkled. So I got sprinkled in the Methodist church. The second time was because I said, I don't think sprinkling was what was supposed to happen because my life isn't really much different. I haven't changed. So around late 14 or 15, I asked to be taken to a Baptist church who had a pool, and they dumped me. Well, that one didn't take you. So then later on, after I was 19 and I went through this ordeal, and God really got a hold of me. The church I was a part of, we went out to a lake, and they actually dumped me in the lake. And that moment didn't change my life. My life had already changed. That moment was about me exposing to the whole world, this is what God has done inside of me. And so now, whatever I do, I don't do much of anything half-heartedly. Or God just built me that way. If I'm going to do something, I'm going all in. If the problem is solved, I want the problem solved. I don't want to put a Band-Aid on it. And so now I'm in college. God's gotten a hold of me, and he's talking. And I need to hear what he's saying. I need to see who he is and to hear who he is. So I have a co-op job. I'm getting a degree in graphic design. And I'm working for a company, W.C. Bradley, that makes grills. And we have an hour-long lunch break. And I only live about 3 miles away from where the plant is. So during my lunch break, I start to go home. I'm fasting. I'm praying. I'm reading. Yeah, this is weird for a 19 and 20-year-old to do this kind of stuff. But I need to know who this God was who was talking to me, who had brought me to this point. And he did. I read the Bible through, I can't tell you how many times. This lasted for about a year. And then I moved. I was in Alabama all this time, where my mom lives. I moved here so I could get the Hope Scholarship and join my dad and his wife here in Battle, Georgia. And I went to the University of West Georgia. And I remember there was a moment there when somebody asked me in the student center, we were talking, and like I said, I'm weird, crazy person. And so I'm talking about Jesus, about God and all the stuff he's done for me. And she says to me, look, I get it, it's cool that you believe all that. But how can you know that it's real? How can you know that it's right? And this is one of those marking moments that I prayed about earlier. I said, I thought about it. And I said, honestly, at this point in my life, I know that I'm here because God brought me here. And so in order for you to convince me that God is wrong and that what I'm saying isn't true, that he didn't bring me here, that he's not my life, you're really going to have to convince me that I'm dead. So if you can convince me that I'm dead, then you can convince me now at this point that God's not real and that he's not in control. That level of commitment, that level of this is real to me, this is my life, this isn't, I've got a really good life because I'm a good person and I have Jesus in my pocket. That's where God wants to take us all to. He wants to shake up our sense of normal. Right? Normal, I'm an IT guy. That's what I do. I fix computers, but that's really not who I am. I'm a child of the King. Every one of us here, we're children of God. And he put us here on earth not to fix computers, not to teach. I'm sure in this room we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have pastors, we have worship leaders, we have accountants, we have all of those things. That's what you guys will do to make a living. That's what you will do to earn money, put food on your table. That's the vehicle that God will give to many of you. But that's not who you are. That's not why you exist. I don't exist to do IT. I exist to serve God. God orchestrated all of these things through my whole life to bring us here to this moment. I'm going to read you something from an African bishop who was asked a question. An African bishop described the wonderful things his churches were doing in a difficult part of his country. Hundreds of us listened to him, and we were deeply moved. After he spoke, the bishop took questions. Someone asked what a great many of us wanted to know. Why aren't things like you described happening here in our country? The man wasn't a diplomat. I like that about him. And I liked it more after he answered this question. He said, here's the reason you do not have such things happening in this country. You Americans study your God. We Africans worship ours. You get smarter. We get changed. And then we change the world around us. His next words never left me. By doing rather than merely studying, we create a culture. Newcomers and the young feed on that culture. They watch. They do. They too are changed. Our culture expands. You Americans create a system of thought. The most you ask is that people contemplate new ideas. You might ask them to give or sometimes attend meetings, but no contagious culture is created. Nothing is offered to newcomers and the young but thoughts. So they think, they don't do. We are changed. We craft a contagious culture. People feed on this culture and change the world. Folks' lives change because of who we are. My life has changed because my dad allowed God to change his life. There are lives that every one of us is going to come in contact with. And we have to recognize that God makes us promises. He promises that he will prepare us for wherever he puts us. So every moment, every step that he has brought you to, every place that God takes you to, he wants you to know, he wants you to have the confidence that he's brought you there because he's prepared you to be there. But it's not in yourself. It's not because you got a great education, which you are getting here. It's not because you've heard awesome messages, though that is going to be a part of it. It's not because you have perfect parents or because of any of those things. He has prepared you because you walked with him to that moment. And if you haven't walked perfectly, don't worry about it. He's got you covered too. That's what grace is for. The Holy Spirit and grace, they are the power to do this. If we don't lean into that power, we get trapped in this wheel of trying. Right? Where we try really hard to do good and then we fail and then we despair. And something may lift us up and we get inspired again and then we try really hard again and then we fail and then we get discouraged. And we get trapped in that wheel over and over until we realize what God really wants is, I'm going to go after him. I'm going to seek Jesus. I'm going to read. I'm going to study. I'm going to pray. And then I'm not just going to keep it inside, but I'm going to share it. Because as we share with each other, things change. Hearts change, lives change, we move. But that confidence is what God wants you to know as your normal. Our normal isn't just, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my best to make it through the day. Oh, I had a good week this week. I had a bad week last week. The normal that God wants us to be after is, I see God moving. I hear Him talking. In my classmates, in my family, in my friends, in my neighborhood, on the football field, when I'm inside of the IT closet, when I'm inside of a classroom, when I'm inside of someone else's, a doctor's office, or a lawyer's office, or an accountant's office. God is there and He's moving. He doesn't sit back and say, all right, I'm going to let you finish working on that computer, and then I'll come back and join you again. He's right there with me in every one of those moments. I got a new car now, a little over a year ago, about 16 months ago. And I wanted new wheels on my car. It was a nice car. I'd never had a nice car with wheels on it, and I wanted that. So I decided I was going to get wheels, but I'm fiscally responsible. So I ordered those wheels on eBay. And then I took them to a shop to get those wheels put on. And while I was in the waiting room of the shop, they told me, oh, it's not going to be a problem. We'll have you out of here in 30 minutes, 35, 40 tops. Well, 50 minutes later, I was still sitting in the waiting room, waiting for them to order more parts to put my wheels on. And while I was sitting there, I decided, well, God, you got me here. Let's just see what happens. I wasn't totally consciously thinking just like that, but that was the mindset. And then a little while later, about an hour in, a lady walks through the door. Her name is Patty. And Patty is having a really rough time right now. And she comes into the waiting room after they go to work on her car. And I say good morning, being very polite, because that's normal. You say hello, good morning to people. And then Patty says, how are you doing? And I always think about that because I don't just say, oh, I'm doing great, I'm doing good. If I tell you how I'm doing, I'm really doing good. And so I thought, and I said, actually, I'm doing pretty good right now, Patty. And then Patty tells me she's not doing so good. And this is weird because I don't know her. I don't know this woman at all. Never met her before in my life. And she starts telling me about the cancer that her mom has, and that she's been in a car wreck. She's got 3 kids who've been in a car wreck, and her husband and her are kind of drifting apart, and he's living in the basement, and she's living upstairs. And I just met her 5 minutes ago. So this is weird. But Patty tells me all of this stuff. And then at the end, she starts to tell me, because I think this is how we're built. She starts to tell me how she goes to church sometimes, not all the time, and she reads and she prays, and she's not quite sure about how it all works, and she's not sure why God is doing this. And I there in that moment literally stop, close my eyes, and I pray, God, help. Because I have no idea what this woman needs and how to help her, but I know you want to help her right now. So I shared with Patty what God shared with me. And we walk through some scriptures, and I share with her a part of my story and how God brings us to moments like that, to these crossroads and crises, not to beat us down or to prove to us how bad we are, but because when you get to a place like that where there's literally nothing you can do, you can't wish hard enough for cancer to go away. When you get to a place where there's nothing else that you can do, then we cry out and say, God, I give up. I need you. We pray. He brings us to those moments so that now we will really glorify Him. We'll look up. One of the ways I knew that I had gotten saved was, I told you guys earlier, I hated my mom for the way that we lived. And there was a moment when I recognized I didn't hate her anymore because I saw the sacrifice. I saw what she'd given up. And that was part of why I was here. That's why I can share this with Patty, because I've been in a similar place, and God now has walked me somewhere else. So Patty gets her car, and they go off. She drives off down the road, and then she comes back a few minutes later, and I say, oh God, no, not something else. Told me she would blow out a tire, her engine light came on as soon as she pulled out of here. But she didn't go to the counter. She actually walked over to where I was, and she said, thank you. You don't know what that meant to me. You didn't have to talk to me. You didn't have to share that with me. You could have just said, oh, I'm so sorry. But you spoke to me and it made a difference, and I want to thank you. And I said, thank you so much, Patty. I needed to hear that. And we're going to pray together right here, right now. So Patty and I prayed right there in the middle of the Kaufman Tire waiting room on Riverside Parkway in Lawrenceville. There was a young man. I was driving down the road in that new car, so this is a little while after I have spoken to Patty, because I've got the wheels of my car and I'm driving down the road one day in the rain. Just bottom of my head, I don't know if I listen to music or not, but I passed by a young man walking down the road in the rain with an umbrella. And God brought it to my mind, I know what it's like to be that man. I've walked down the road in the rain with an umbrella before. Now, I don't know this young man. I don't know who he is, where he lives, where he's going. But God spoke to me. And he says, I want to give him a ride. And I just passed by and I said, oh, well, better send somebody because I'm on down the road now. I'm going this way and he's going that way. So, sorry, but I'll pray for him. God said, really? I said, no. And so I turned around and did a U-turn in the road and I drove back. And I rolled down my window and said, hey man, do you need a ride? And he said, let me think about it for a minute. And he started walking again. And so I kind of creeped down the road. He says, yeah, I do like to use a ride. I said, all right, I'm going to meet you down here at this intersection. So I drove down to the intersection and he gets in my car. And I find out his name. And he and I start talking that morning, and I take him to school, and it just so happens he's walking in the opposite direction, but we're actually going to a similar place. The school that he's going to is right on my way to work. So then, for the next 7 months, 3 days a week, I picked him up. I drove to his house, and I picked him up, and I take him to school. And what I learned over that time was he's somewhere on the autism spectrum. He doesn't interact well or easily with people. He lost his dad when he was 9. For Nigeria. His family was a total mess. Him and his mom fight, him and his sister fight. He didn't have anybody in his life to speak to him, to share the love and the grace of God. So for 7 months, or 6 months, I don't know the exact time frame, but for that time span, I picked him up and he and I talked. There were a few times when we had some really deep, meaningful conversations. He asked me about finances because he didn't know how money worked. He asked me about how to deal with the Uber driver that he got into a fight with, how to help his sister because he was fighting with his sister all the time. He texts me still on almost every holiday just to say hello. At the end of that time, when our time was over, the only reason it ended is because he said, I am going to get my license. And I have a car. But I'm nervous. So we prayed about him taking his driver's test. And before that, we prayed. One day he lost his keys when he was walking down the road, and we prayed, and the next day he found his keys. And he had exams that he was nervous about, and there were times we prayed, and then he passed all of his exams. And so we prayed for him going to take his driver's test. And I got one of the best texts of my life on that Thursday or Friday when we were saying, I passed my driver's test. And I want to thank you for picking me up all those times and taking me to school. And for all the things that you did and you didn't have to do. I just want to thank you. What he doesn't know is I didn't have to do. I could have chosen not to. But that's what I saw God doing. And so that was normal. It's weird when we talk to people who don't understand it. But when we see God doing it, it's not nearly as weird. All of this is all because of Jesus. I'm not just a good person. I'm sorry if I fooled you all. But I'm not. But Jesus is awesome. And he chose to come and live here. And so now my job is not to do IT. My job is to share that. I consider myself kind of like a guerrilla warfare soldier. Companies hire us to come in and fix their cords and plug in the printers and set up their computers. But what they don't know is that Jesus needed a way in the door I just happened to be the vehicle that he got inside of to get in there. So there have been times when me and some of my compatriots are in an office, and the lady at the desk that we're working beside gets a phone call that her mom has cancer and she's getting rushed to the hospital because she's not breathing. And so we stop what we're doing and we pray for her right then and there. I've walked into buildings when there was supposed to be a problem, but the problem has miraculously disappeared. And so now we look for, what is God doing? Why am I really here? And we pray with people. We share with people. We give to people because that is who we are, because that is what we see God doing. That is what we hear Him doing. That is our normal. That when we come to Jesus, when we come to Christ, that's what He invites us into. It's not just to show up on Sunday mornings and Friday mornings and Wednesday nights. That is where we get built up. That's where we encourage each other. But our normal is to do what we see Him do. To say what we hear Him say. That is our normal. Don't just tell folks, if I could encourage you guys in something, I want you to get in the habit that I didn't get in until way too late. Well, not too late, just later. We often tell people that we're going to pray for them. I will pray for you. I am praying for you. Let's do it right then and there. Why put it off? Why don't we make that our culture? Why don't we make that our normal? There was a couple in a church service, so I attend 12 Stone, and there was a couple who was struggling. The wife had gotten pregnant after a long time, and she was in some pain. There was bleeding. The pregnancy was complicated, and they wanted prayer, needed prayer, so we prayed. And this past weekend, her and her husband came back to me. I don't remember their names, but they remembered that we had prayed. And they came back and said she had just gotten off bed rest, and everything was good. God met all of us in that moment because I'm nothing special, but He is. And so I just shared them with Him. There was another moment about a month ago where there was a lady who came and she was kind of broken. And this is just out in the lobby before service. We haven't gone any of the worship music going on, just in the lobby. And I'm on the greeter team. And so there are things that need to be done logistically. People need to be in places. But I start talking to her, and she shares with me about her heart is broken for her husband. She's coming along, her sons, her daughters. Her life is not what she expected it to be. She's broken. And we meet in that moment, and I share with her what God has shared with me, His heart for her. And then somebody comes to ask me a question, and I say, I'll get with you in a second. And she says to me, wait, I know you've got more important things to do than this. And I stop her right there and say, no, there is nothing more important on earth than this right here and right now. Because this is what God is doing. If I go and handle this other thing, then I'm missing. And so you are the most important thing to Him right now. And that has changed the course of the last couple of weeks for her. So now, I am an IT guy. But that's not really what I am. I'm a child of the King. I don't get to stand in front of big groups of people very often. That's not my thing. I'm hidden away in quarter closets, as my wife likes to call them. Tucked under desks. I lurk in the shadows. I jump on screens and make things move when people aren't expecting them to. But I don't get to stand in front of people and talk. Most of us won't do this through most of our lives. But what we will get to do is leave one here, two there. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the story about the little boy who was walking along the beach and there's thousands of starfish on the beach that have been washed up and they're going to die if they stay there, if they can't get back to the water. And he's picking up one and he throws it back. He picks up another one and he throws it back. And a man comes to him and he says, son, why are you doing this? You can't save all of these starfish. You can't make that big of a difference. And the little boy picks up another one and he throws it back and says, I made a difference to them. We may not change the whole world, But every person in this room has the ability, because of who's inside of us, to change one life at a time. And God may take you to thousands of lives, or He may take you to tens of lives. But it starts with us recognizing who He is, and that He's inside of us. And that this is His normal. Right? Not to be like me, that's not what I'm saying. Like I said, I kind of suck. But Jesus is kind of awesome. And so as long as I can see Him and do what He says, do what I see Him doing, then things will be pretty good. So now, 2 years ago is when I started at Harness Group. There was a much bigger company that I worked for before that. They'll probably do close to $1 billion this year or so. And God used that mightily. I learned so much while I was there. And it was so that while I was there, the way the company was structured is I owned a part of the company. Every employee had stock in the company. And so I'm kind of wrestling with how I want to deliver this. Because and the reason I'm doing that is because I want Jesus to get the glory. But if I had stayed at that company with the level that I was at and with what was given to me in stock for that company, I would have been a millionaire by the time I was 45, 46, somewhere around there. So why am I working for Harness Group where that is probably not going to happen? It was because I went and had lunch with my friend who was standing in the back over there at the bar. I went and had lunch with my friends, and we talked about these things. We talked about what God was doing in our lives. We talked about messages that we heard. We talked about Him sharing with us. And then at the end of it, he said, he asked me something. What do you do for a living? I'm like, well, we've been friends for 5 years. I do not know what I do for a living. And it's just because he doesn't care. But I told him I was in IT, and he said, let me ask you something. Would you consider leaving where you are and coming to work with me, with our company? And I said, no, not interested. I've got a really good gig where I am. Things are good. I'm paid well. I've got a pretty good amount of autonomy. I'm pretty set. So God's using me here. This is where God has put me. No, thank you, but no thank you. Well, as y'all can tell, God changed things. So 2 years ago, it was almost, I think it was today, as a matter of fact, 2 years ago that he and I went and sat down and had lunch. And I went and started Harness Group on November 20th of 2017. Why did I do that? Why would I leave all of that? Well, like I said, I usually don't get to speak in front of big groups of people. It's usually ones and twos, not ones and twos and threes, small group. I'm in 3 small groups. But if I hadn't heard God, if God hadn't spoken to me and made that decision, what happened is over the next 2 weeks, He shifted things. And my situation changed at the other job, but not because I was getting ready to get fired or anything like that. No, I was going on trips, I was traveling more, I was working my way up. God said, I've got something different for you now. Here's the thing, I'm going to tell you a secret that a lot of adults may not want you to know. At that time, God actually gave me a choice. It's not always this one very clear linear path. God said, you can choose to stay here, and I'll be with you. Or you can choose to go, and I'll be with you. It's your choice. When you walk with Him long enough, He starts to give you choices. Now He says, this choice comes with a set of consequences. My life would look different today if I stayed there. I definitely wouldn't be standing here in front of you because I wouldn't know that Bethlehem Christian Academy existed. Or, if you go this way, here's the set of consequences that come along with this choice. Well, I made this decision. After going in and hearing their heart for how we go out into the world and recognizing, yeah, we're an IT company, but this is really who we are. We get to do stuff like this. So technically, I'm on the clock right now. I'm working. But I'm not fixing a single computer. I'm not organizing any corners. I'm sharing what great things God has done for me. That is why that decision was made, because God's got this. All right? He's got that in every one of you guys also. So with that being said, go love some. Go share what God